In this lesson, we'll begin building the handlebars. So if we go into the side view, we can sort of see the shape of the handlebars here, at least from the side. And so let's start to build those up. We can use any type of curve that you want. I'm just going to use a CV curve. And I'll just start to draw this out from the side. Okay, once I get to the top, I'm actually going to switch views and come into the front view. And I know that I want to kind of curve it over and down. So I'm going to try to make something like that. Not worrying too much about being exact since we're not working with any artwork here. Okay, now I'll go ahead and move it over to the outside there. Okay, and start to modify this. So I know that I want it to come and kind of attach into this piece down here. So go to component mode and move some of these CVs around. I know I want this one to kind of connect in right about there, and then I can go ahead and modify these to match up with that. Okay, so we've got a curve that we're kind of modifying in all three axes here. We drew part of it in the side view and then part of it in the front view, and now we're just modifying this so we get a nice smooth curve for our handlebars. Okay, and again, yours don't have to match mine. You just want to create the curve itself. It's the important part of it. Okay, we get this kind of a ram's horn kind of a look here. Alright, so once we've got this curve, this is actually going to be our path, and we're going to create geometry that flows along this path. Okay, so we want it to be sort of cylindrical shaped, circular shaped, and so let's bring in a NURBS primitive circle. I'll drop that in. We'll just leave it right where it is. Okay, let me just clean this up a little bit. And so to get this to work, we'll go ahead and select the circle, and then which is going to be our profile, and we're going to extrude along this path. So we'll go to Surfaces, Menu Set, Surfaces, and let's choose Extrude, and let's go into the options. We want to choose a tube style. We want the resulting position to be at the path, and the pivot, let's choose component for the pivot type. Okay, we'll create NURBS. We can also change that to polygons. We can create polygons and so forth. Let's just start with NURBS. So go ahead and extrude that. And now you can see that this circle is being extruded along this curve, and geometry is being created as it goes along. Now, because of the history connection, we can take this circle and we can either scale it or we can take the radius. And you can see as we dial that radius down, it dials down the resulting surface as well, because there's still that connection. So we can maybe set that to 0.15. That's probably good. Now because of that connection, we can still go and select this curve. If I go into a wireframe, you can see the curve still inside there. If I actually select the curve, you can see how that geometry shows up pink. It's letting us know it's still connected. And I can select these points and move these points on the path. And just like we modified the circle and it updated the surface, if we modify this curve, it'll update the surface as well. So we can still go in and modify the shape with our geometry on it until we get what we want. Okay, now you can see that the thickness of our handlebars is a little bit too thick for the pivot that we've got there. Okay, so you want to adjust these until they look right. Okay, you can see it matches up there. And so I'm going to go ahead and just take that radius maybe down just a hair. Okay, and then also maybe take this curve back a little bit. Alright, just so it doesn't hit the front there. And then we can go ahead and take this. I'm going to hit 1 to go back here to our low res, our base. And let's go ahead and select all of these faces on the front here. So we'll go through and select these. Good thing to do when you're selecting faces like this is go to your wireframe just to make sure that you don't have any faces selected on the back like we do here. We can just control drag across those to get rid of that selection. Okay. So that should be good. Okay. Now let's go ahead and extrude those out. So we'll go back to our extrude. Now it's a little bit confusing maybe. We've got a polygon extrude and then we just used the NURBS extrude, and they do slightly different things. Although when you're extruding using a curve, it's very similar, whereas we're extruding faces along a curve. So just keep that in mind. We've got polygon extrude, which will pull these faces out, and then we've got a NURBS extrude, which will take a profile and extrude it along a path curve. So make sure that you keep those straight. So we'll go ahead and extrude this out. Go to our world pivot and just move it straight out here. Okay, we just want it to be able to connect in with this. Now you see we've got this seam here. I don't mind that being there, but if you don't like that, the reason for that is the fact that we've got these two edges right next to each other and then a third right very close, and the direction changes, and so it's creating that crease. If you want to get rid of that crease, let's try it on this piece here. We can scale these apart. Okay, so give it a little space. We can also go into our move tool and our move settings and choose a move axis of along normal. And now when we, for instance, select this piece, we can move it along its normal, which will sort of maintain the curvature here. Okay, and if then if we want to move it back into the surface, we can move actually along the normal axis. So rather than using like a world mode to move it. And so you can see we can start to smooth that out, and you can do the same thing on these other lines as well if you want to. Okay, so here it's going to be very sharp when we smooth it. Here it's going to be a little bit more of a smooth contour. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do is finish up the handlebars. We'll look at extracting some geometry for the grip from these, and then adding a piece on the end, and then duplicating those over. So we'll go ahead and do that next.